Hello, and welcome back to Arts Respond on WNHH Community Radio 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm Lucy Gellman, and today I'm very excited to be with two people who are both artists in their own life and helpers. So if the past 11 months, if not much longer than that, I would say maybe the past 400 years, has taught us anything, it's taught us to look for the helpers around us, and I'm very excited to be talking to two of them today. Jamarr Jabari and Eliot Olsen both work with the nonprofit Life in My Days. And today we'll be talking about mutual aid efforts and specifically housing initiatives that are happening in response to the upcoming end of the eviction moratorium. Jamarr and Eliot, welcome so much. It's Friday. Words are hard. Welcome to the program. Welcome. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled that both of you are here. So before we get into mutual aid efforts and even talking a little bit about what mutual aid is for listeners who maybe haven't heard the term before or are a little unfamiliar with it, I'm wondering if both of you can talk a little bit about what Life in My Days is and how you each got involved with the organization. Yep, just hop in.
I'll go first. So I started Life in My Days in 2018, like towards the end of the year to the turn of 2019. And Life in My Days is around the time Life in My Days was only 3 years old, and Life in My Days work was given mostly by Ahmed, who was the former executive director of Life in My Days. And Ahmed basically ran a lot of programs. Some programs I would name would be sponsorship for families, and also Justice Academy, Transformative Justice Academy. A lot of work, a lot of peer support groups, and a lot of trainings, basically talking about activism and different types of activism. Um, a lot of great work that's centering the voices of people of color, centering the voices of homeless people, people that are dealing with trauma and PTSD, all various works. That's what Life in My Days has done here in Connecticut. We have another chapter in Jordan. Um, and it was created by a group of refugees, of Middle Eastern refugees, that have a vision to just basically create a very awesome grassroots organization that can support people. Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. If you're able to get a little bit closer to the mic on your device, that'd be awesome. But if not, we're going to make it work because this is grassroots radio 11 months into a global pandemic, and that is what it is. Eliot, how about yourself?
Sorry about that. I was muted.
That's okay.
So I joined Life in My Days a little over 6 months ago. Kind of with, as Jamarr said, knowing the org to be revolving around mutual aid, community empowerment. I already knew of the peer support groups and of the Transformative Justice Academy. So I was really honored to be invited onto the team. And I am, just for the audience, thanks, Director of Development at Life in My Days. And just because you noted it, for anybody listening who does or isn't familiar with the term mutual aid, it's basically supporting people who are in difficult situations or who need support. And this is especially relevant right now because of COVID. We are all struggling in our own way, but we already have parts of our community that are struggling before the pandemic. So when COVID hit, it just exacerbated what was already there. And you can see this with, losing jobs, not being able to pay rent, not being able to find food, childcare. So we do a lot of mutual aid service. We also have organized statewide mutual aid meetings for all mutual aid groups in Connecticut, or all of those that responded to us. And we're very grassroots. We're very community based. We only serve the people that we represent within our own staff. And we are focused on the BIPOC population. We're focused on, already trodden down communities who don't have their voices heard a lot of the time and aren't able to garner the resources that they need. We're also very, focused on queer and trans social justice, as well as disability justice and mental health. So I guess maybe if you didn't know what mutual aid was before, I might have confused you more, and I apologize if that is the case.
I don't think that's the case, actually. And I mean, what I find, I sort of started seeing things pop up. So one of the things Life in My Days does is work through and with the CT Mutual Aid Hub, which is largely run, at least on the front end, I can't speak for the back end, but through social media. And I started seeing things pop up a while ago. So she's not able to be with us today, but MiAsia Harris, who is also with Life in My Days and one of the 5 just totally badass people running Black Lives Matter New Haven, which is awesome. But MiAsia, I would see notifications from her saying, hey, I need diapers for a mom in New London. I need transport for someone in New Haven. And I think that, the pandemic, Eliot, as you said, has exacerbated a level of need that existed in Connecticut beforehand. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little about housing efforts and also loopholes. So a lot of folks don't know that there are loopholes in the eviction moratorium. And I know that Life in My Days is one of many, many organizations that has been trying to say, hey, this is not okay that there are loopholes. So some people hear the words eviction moratorium and they think, hey, that's fantastic. No one's going to get kicked out of their home for back rent that they can't pay. But actually, people are being kicked out of their homes right now. And when the eviction moratorium ends, there may be, or I would say will be, a huge crisis. And that crisis, we know just from data, is going to be higher for trans folk. It's going to be higher for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color and non-binary folk. And so I'm wondering if you can, I know I threw a lot at you right there, but both Jamarr and Eliot, I'm wondering if first you can talk about loopholes that Life in My Days is trying to educate folks about that exist within the eviction moratorium.
I can respond to that real quick,
Sure,
if that's okay, and
yeah,
Jamarr
please.
can follow me up. So basically, the loophole, and the not good loophole within the moratorium, is that we have no enforcement of people not being evicted. So sure, we have it, said that you can't evict anybody right now. But that doesn't mean if a landlord tries to evict you that you won't be evicted. So right now we need to organize on the ground instead of waiting for laws to get stronger in response to these landlords, because, bureaucracy takes time. And this is an immediate issue. You can't tell the police who are knocking at your door to say you've been notified, you need to leave now, but wait, my senator, my representatives are talking about this right now. It needs to be an on the ground issue because it needs an immediate response, because it is an immediate threat, and more so not even a threat. It's something that is happening regularly across the state. and we need to take care of each other right now as a community, especially not only because of the pandemic, but it's winter.
Yeah.
It's winter during COVID. Housing is a huge issue right now, and it's only going to become bigger when the rent moratorium ends and you owe so many months of back rent if your landlord was favorable to you enough to not kick you out. And the way Life of My Days has responded to this is by expanding our mutual aid efforts. We host Connecticut Mutual Aid, ctmutualaid.com, where you can create tickets of need and then you are responded to. And like you were saying on Facebook, a lot of that is done through just nonprofits talking to each other and being like, I have this person who's in this area who can help. But the We Shelter Us campaign is specifically grounded in communities, housing communities, and not waiting in recognition that we can't wait for people for like legislature to basically catch up. So what we're hoping to do, or more so what we're in the process of doing, is fundraising and creating an extension of our website that I already talked about, where you can put in a ticket for housing and then connecting through our statewide mutual aid meetings that we've been having other organizations who can then place people within whatever town or city they're in that maybe we're not in. So trying to localize basically all our efforts into one place. That was a little bit long-winded.
That's okay.
But I know Jamar can also like say a lot more too.
Yeah, Jamar, please hop in.
Yeah, sure. We are fundraising towards the housing crisis, focusing on LGBTQ people as well too, because trans people are, a lot of people don't know that trans people are like the highest homeless within the state of Connecticut as well too. And I just want to big up all the work that Cancel the Rent has done, with also getting representation, focusing on making sure that there's representation uh, for the legal system when people are dealing with evictions, because you know that if you don't know the law, you can still get in trouble and still be evicted and everything. And it's hard to get lawyers around, especially when you are dealing with eviction crisis. So that's a lot of good work that they're trying to like build on, and I think that's a great thing. Because you know, you get a public defender who break the law. We should get a defender that helps us with evictions, especially in a time like this. And Eliot is right on. Even though there's laws saying that you can't evict no one, they can still get rid of you. Um, this is something that's happening all over. I see it even within group chats. Somebody's been evicted, even on Christmas Day, or even when it was a very, very snowy day. People were getting put out of their homes. So the need is real, and we definitely need working class power to resolve this issue, because the state is not showing it that they care enough. And they can come at me and say whatever they want. I mean, I'm not afraid of getting in trouble for saying anything about how the state is handling anything. So if you have a problem, I don't care. But it's the fact, it's the truth. This government in Connecticut is not doing enough for its citizens, and they need to do a lot more better. And we can have a discussion on so many levels of how much better they should be doing just on basic needs for housing and cash assistance. Mutual Aid in Middletown is giving out the most money for cash assistance than the government of Connecticut, and that's insane. That working class people are able to get more money into people's pockets to help them out with living issues than their own state, and that should just tell you the volume of what is a priority and and what is not priority to the state. Um, that's what I have to say about
yeah. Well, so I was actually going to say I want to talk about the We Shelter Us campaign, and I want to talk about the fact that yes, state aid is really important. And Jamarr, your comment could not be more timely because Governor Ned Lamont just released his proposed biennial budget earlier this week. But also, I know that in the same way that I think people should look for the helpers, people look for stories and they look for storytellers, because when there are actual people and not numbers behind things like a housing crisis or the end of an eviction moratorium, it becomes much more real. And while some outlets, including the Connecticut Mirror and Jackie Robb Thomas over there, have done a really good job reporting on this, I think those stories have largely gone untold. And so I'm wondering if either or both of you could share just a couple of the stories you've heard, of course, protecting people's names and identities. But just because readers may be watching this and thinking, hey, I haven't encountered that, listeners, sorry, not readers. Hey, I haven't encountered this in my life.
Well, I can tell a story that definitely uh, a lady that was in a small town that has about 3 kids. Um, they were their landlord died,
Mm,
and there was like a lot of back rent and legal issues, and they've been forced to have less than 30 days to be evicted. Um, Also, the first time that we got a big snow, um, it was that day when a family was told that they had to leave immediately, that they're no longer allowed to be on this property. Um, and it was just a struggle. I don't know the full story of what happened with them, but they were. It's just sad that somebody is told that while it's snowing so hard outside and you have kids. And I know I see all these comments when you see these stories posted on social media. I see all these comments and people are just saying rude things like, "Well, they should have got a job,"
mm,
and well, the parents should have did this or that. It's just we're so easy equipped to judge someone's situation and to actually see and understand what's going on.
yeah.
Um, and we need a lot more empathy. That's something that needs to be talked about a lot. Just understanding that these are working class struggles, and it could be you any second. Um, it could be you, and you should be more like respectful and willing to give more. Because no one should have to do it, especially in a country like this that claims it's the richest country in the world but can't take care of the citizens.
Yeah. Eliot, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, totally going off of what Jamarr is saying. Whether you're working class or middle class or even upper class in some instances, the reality of this doesn't really hit you. Even if you are part of networks that is trying to fill this need, until it hits you personally.
Mm,
Like I know people talk about, oh, I knew about it, but then it happened, and then it's like, but now I actually know about it.
yeah.
It's not real until it's real, kind of, right? So this is something that I think a lot of people need to understand, that it's a very it's credibly possible reality for so many more people than they think it is. Because I think the rhetoric a lot when at least middle class or working class people talk about these issues is that, oh, it's undocumented communities, or it's below poverty level communities that are facing these issues, which is not wrong, but at the same time, you can look at an article that just came out in the New Haven Independent, by Thomas Breen, I think it was, which is talking about the moratoriums, and they talk about basically there's certain loopholes specifically baked in for people who rent, and it's wrong to call them loopholes. And I'm going to quote them on this, if that is all right.
Yeah, please.
But it's an actual it's an explicitly sanctioned outcome of a moratorium that carves out specific exceptions for rent-related evictions. So right now, if a landlord says there's been serious non-payment of rent, that is an actual term within the moratorium language. That means you haven't paid 6 months or more, basically. Now, we have people not being able to work for over a year now. So not being able to pay 6 months is, something that is facing quite a lot of people, not just working class people, not just below poverty line communities, not just at-risk communities. It's affecting a lot of people. And so when you think about the actual language in the moratorium, that is specifically stated, I think you start to realize that this is something that can affect any of us. It's not something that is just affecting niche communities, basically. And this is a working class struggle in that, working class people like ourselves often don't own homes. We rent. We don't have the capital to own homes. And, you can go on longer tirades, but I will not do so, about minimum wage and why that might be. But this isn't the place of the time. Invite me back, maybe it will be. But yeah, I don't want to take up too much time. So I think your original question was about specific experiences that had affected us in stories.
Yeah.
One thing that Life of My Days co-hosted with some other organizations was a panel of speakers. It was called Sisters Speak Out. And it was basically about the experience of life inside prison and post during the pandemic, and unrelated to COVID, just what that system is like, specifically in women's prisons. And that it really stuck with me, because I have a lot of lived experience with living below the poverty line. I have lived experience with being homeless, but that is not something that kind of was within my wheelhouse. And so it really, the honesty and kind of just really shook me hard. And I just felt so happy to be part of something that could support that.
Yeah. Thank you. So within the We Shelter Us campaign, when I spoke with both of you before this interview, you basically explained to me that it's a totally grassroots effort, or a largely grassroots effort, where folks are saying, you've been kicked out of your home. I got you. I got you. So what does that look like during a pandemic? First of all, and also, what are I know that there are currently a lot of fundraising initiatives around this. So what does Life in My Days need from the greater mutual aid and Connecticut community? And I'm talking to you wealthy people out there who are listening. I don't think wealthy people listen to conversations on mutual aid, but if they are, I'm talking to y'all too.
Jamar, do you want to take this, or should I put my development hat on?
I'll put your development hat on.
All right, I can do that. So our initial goal was to raise $30,000 in a month. That did not happen. I believe we started that at the very beginning of January. And we have seen a lot of response. It's not that people aren't responding to us. It's that the people who are aware of us are the people we help, kind of. And so those aren't the people who can give larger donations, you know, and honestly, that they're willing to give anything back is kind of on the kindness of them. But so We Shelter Us is an initiative that we are fundraising for currently. And so we basically just extended it to 2 months to raise $30,000. And it is an expansion of our online network that has already been created, where basically you see the Connecticut Mutual Aid group on Facebook, where a lot of mutual aid nonprofits are, and I should say again, like you said, grassroots nonprofits. Everyone does not have a 501c3 status. They're really just gaggles of people who are just like, I'm tired of not doing anything. But taking that group and putting it with our own software that we created. So when you go to our website, you can create a ticket specifically for a housing need and have that housing need addressed no matter where you are in the city. I'm sorry, no matter where you are in the state, to the appropriate mutual aid organization nearest you. Now, the safety concerns in this and, you know, everything else, we are in a very difficult time right now.
Yeah.
So anybody who would answer that ticket, right? It's not just like somebody creates a ticket and then the organization responds to it by like themselves housing a person. It's much more neighbor to neighbor than that. They're just supposed to be kind of a facilitator of a conversation where somebody can answer that ticket who's already logged on basically as a volunteer and be like, absolutely, you know, and this might sound kind of harsh, but you can sleep in my garage for the next month if you want to. Now, I mean, I would love it if they could sleep on the couch instead, but obviously not everyone is that trusting. But that is still much better than freezing to death in the park if, you know, the police let you sleep at all since you're loitering. But I'm not talking about that. So really how we're addressing safety concerns is by offering cleaning supplies, sanitizer, masks, gloves, and all of that kind of stuff to anybody who is helping shelter people. So it's not like they're being directly compensated. This is supposed to be a neighbor helps neighbor kind of activity. But we fully acknowledge that no one wants to be in a more dangerous situation. And so to navigate that, we are budgeting in precautions and sanitation supplies and all those kinds of things that will help create a place that people feel safe, basically. And it's not just neighbors to neighbors, you know, if churches could sign on and be like, you know, we have a whole chapel, or if businesses are like, you can sleep in my storeroom, or, you know, whatever. Like it really is just trying to connect the people in need with people who aren't necessarily part of organizations already, but are those kind people. They are those people who see a need and fill it.
Yeah.
Because I hope, at least, and one thing that drives me in doing this work is that when it comes to the bottom line, we can't just watch someone drown. And I truly hope that that is the case for humanity, because I'm not sure where it leaves us if it's not.
Yeah.
And maybe this is kind of a test right now of whether it is.
Yeah.
But that's our goal. Another important part, and I'll be quiet and let Jamarr talk after this. But another important part of We Shelter Us is that there are certain communities that I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll just use an example. If you're undocumented, it's much harder to find shelter. If you're trans, it's much harder to find shelter. If you're queer, it's much harder to find shelter. There are populations that can't access resources that currently exist. And so part of We Shelter Us is also trying to serve those specific populations as well, and being like, this is cool. We don't need your ID. You don't even we can find like a Spanish speaking only house. We can find a trans friendly house, a queer friendly house. If you only feel comfortable staying somewhere that's only BIPOC, we need to fill the gaps that aren't being addressed, because not only are they not being addressed, they're specifically being widened by the ordinances already stated for people to fall through.
And I would say by the pandemic. So Jamarr, as I pivot to you, I actually want to come back to that question of state aid. Governor Ned Lamont dropped the biennial budget for fiscal year 2022-23 earlier this week, and a lot of Democrats in the state legislature have already come out swinging, which I'm really proud of New Haven's delegation, especially saying this is not an equitable proposal. So in the budget, to spare Connecticut taxpayers a tax hike, Lamont has largely stalled a lot of other funding, and the funding he's raised, which does include education and general aid, although education is stalled for 2 years in a wonky, gross way that I won't get into, relies on federal aid coming in, which is kind of a big question mark, even though Joe Biden has said that he will vastly increase COVID-19 relief from literally nothing that happened under Trump. So that is one thing. And then at the same time, in cities like New Haven, but this is true in cities across the state that tend to have more people of color, folks of color who are at greater risk of eviction, there's also the question of consistent underfunding of the state's pilot program, which is payment in lieu of taxes. In New Haven, that's something very close to my heart because 60% of the city is now tax exempt and 42% of that is Yale New Haven Hospital. And so, Jamarr, I'm wondering, earlier you said, oh, well, we could talk about more state aid, but I'm not going to go into that. I want you to go into it, please.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, my feelings towards Lamont has always been, I knew that he was an out of touch individual, and this pandemic is showing just how out of touch individually that he is. So thank you Ned Lamont for singing "Get Up, Stand Up for Your Rights" at that rally in New Haven that I was at. acting like that you were supporting black people and everybody was dancing with you, but I wasn't. You were screwy from the beginning. I already saw it, and this is exactly showing what we're seeing right now. That these programs that need to happen right now, the programs that need to happen is housing, canceling the rent, canceling mortgages. Um, and hey, that sounds like a big deal, but hey, if you're the first to do it and actually show that it works, it just snowballs over. Um, we need more health care for everyone in the state of Connecticut, universal health care. That's one thing we can use the money towards. We can use the money towards getting money into people's pockets that needs help. If you don't have an initiative for mutual aid, then you should give the mutual aid money to people that are actually doing grassroots mutual aid. There's a lot of ways that the government can help out, and I do want to thank the Democrats locally that have been setting the fire, and also thank the activists that have been setting the fire and are planning on setting the fire, because this is just basically not good at all, and it needs to just change. Ned Lamont needs to understand that his proposals is not effective, and instead of whatever idea he has, he needs to listen to the people more. Because if you listen to the people more, we will be telling him exactly what we need. And and there could be all these stereotypical things like, well, they don't really need all this, they don't really need all that. That's just ableist, elitist nonsense. um, and it's 2021. It's time that we stop acting like America's about pulling yourself up the bootstraps. When the
Mm.
country is hurt, the country needs aid. You could bail out Wall Street, you could bail out working class people. And it's that plain, that simple. So I don't want to hear any excuses of, well, what is their intentions? It's not about what's their intentions. What is your intentions? Because your intentions have always showed that you've shown that you only support the bourgeois system. And we, the working class, always have to suffer under that. And I don't want to. And look, I don't know what New Haven Independence agenda is, but if I'm saying this, come at me if you want to. All right, do not come at anybody else. I don't care anymore. People have came at me before, so smoke is smoke. It's wrong, and it needs to stop seriously, because there's there's so much. If he could just walk in the street, and I'm pretty sure he never sat on a bus, and if he did sit on the bus, he was with his PR crew or something, or like huddled up together and stuff. So if he just ever sat on the bus and walked down these streets in New Haven and see exactly what people need, he would have a different agenda. But he never did that, and so I'm not surprised that he's acting this way. And I have no hope for Biden either. I could just go on the whole thing about Biden if I wanted to, and I don't want to do that. But I just think that the government mindset is on getting back to normal. The government's mindset is on trying to get this pandemic to squeeze the profits for whatever agenda they have, and be as less helpful for whatever agenda they want to be, just because of this pandemic, instead of helping in this pandemic. And we see that now. And it's time that everybody, I mean, we got to make these people uncomfortable. And we have to
Mm.
go to where they're at. We got to figure out strategic ways to get their attention, because they're not listening. And town hall and all that is, it's a pandemic now, so we can't even really go over there. So now it's a new age of how can we get their attention. And and that's just a priority right now, because they're monopolizing this. Honestly, nonprofits that are like cozy with the government, cozy with the state, they're getting funding, but nonprofits that the state doesn't really don't want to have ties with, like Life in My Days, um, we're not getting funding like that. And I would know, we would know if the government actually want to like support grassroots organization Life in My Days, because we would have got funding. But no, this is a serious issue that is just, oh, let's do what we can
Mm.
slowly for these people, and then hopefully it gets pushed over. They're just trying to buy time, thinking these vaccines or whatever idea they have is going to work, and the pressure is going to go away. But no, this is not going away. This needs to understand that mutual aid started, and mutual aid should not end. Mutual aid should also progress from this.
Yeah. Well, I want to pivot a little bit, although certainly we could probably have like a 4-hour discussion about the our concerns around the shortcomings of both statewide and the federal administration. But I want to pivot a little bit because both of you are also artists, and I'm wondering, what is the role of art? So I'm an arts reporter, although I have a very broad view of what constitutes arts and culture, which gets me in trouble a lot of the time. But well, what are the role of artists within this discussion of mutual aid, within this discussion of helping others? Jamarr, I think you
go
might.
first. Oh, okay, I go first. Okay. Yeah. Um, I, honestly, I feel like music is for me. I'm a musician. Music is basically it's honestly the one of the best things that humanity has ever discovered, and it's inspiring, and it gets people in the mood. And one great thing about music is where you could share a lot of your revolutionary opinions and a lot of your revolutionary experiences. A way to get the masses' attention without um, it's a way to get the masses' attention in a way that they're just like dancing and grooving, but they're also learning about what's going on. Music is so effective in so many ways. You could just push anything through music and it will just get attention um, as it should be. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I just lost track.
Oh, I just said, what is the role, and you're answering it. What is the role of artists in
Right.
this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for artists to stand in solidarity with the working class, because art is working class as well too. I don't care how big and famous, how many Grammys you got, you are a worker, and you're being exploited by the record companies. You're being exploited by the producers. So you are a working class person, and the reason why that they are exploiting you is because they see profit in you. Just like with me being a Yale worker, a musician that's not with a record label or anything. Um, they need me in order for them to build profit. Um, so I think it's important that we keep that consciousness together and that spirit of oneness. People like Bob Marley are gods to me because they embedded that within their music. Um, and I just don't think it's possible for you to be an artist and not want to be helpful to a man and not want to change humanity. And that's with anything. That's not just with music. That's with arts. That's with movies. That's with music videos. That's with animations. All kinds of things. There's something that inspired you, and there's a message that you want to get. And maybe it'll be conservative, maybe it'll be liberal, but no one that's an artist doesn't want to have a voice. I don't think so.
Eliot, you're a photographer and photojournalist. For you, what is the role of artists in this, especially as someone who also, you have the power of documenting folks?
Yeah, I want to say real quick, I think Jamarr is shortchanging himself a little bit because he's the director of events and art performances at Life of My Days, because we host open mics, and we're currently about to put up an online art gallery, all thanks to him. So any artists out there, if you would like to be part of that, email I belong at lifeofmydays.com. A quick shout out. But the role of artists in mutual aid, my dad is a painter, in both senses. He's a gallery artist. He's been in galleries since I first had memories. I remember crawling around in his studio, and he is not Andy Warhol. So he's also a house painter, because, you can't eat your canvas, or, try to pay your bills with it, although he has paid his dentist with art. But so I think the role of I have a lot of perspectives kind of, and just like in different experiences within the art world. But to your question, I think the role of artists in mutual aid is that art in itself kind of is a form of mutual aid. And I think Jamarr was kind of getting at this a little bit. Just like we create art not to hide it away. And maybe some of us do. I don't like to show a lot of people my paintings. They only can see the good things. But when an artist creates something, it most of the time creates an effect, and that effect is supposed to kind of put you on a journey of some sort. It's supposed to ask a question for you, or just make you ask the question, what is it? Or it's a specific response to something actually happening, like politically, or outside of your own personal narrative, more I should say. So in that way, all artists are kind of partaking in mutual aid, in that they are sharing their experiences, and that they are representing the connections between people and making it as accessible as possible, which is kind of the crazy thing about the art world, because when you get into the higher echelons, it's the least accessible thing you'll ever see. You know, private art gallery showings, and if you're an artist who's doing well, you're selling things for thousands and thousands of dollars. That's not gonna end up, or more I should say, that's only gonna end up in a very specific segment of the population's houses. So art kind of has to sell its soul a little bit if it wants to just exist that way and not have a secondary. And that's a large claim. And I'm sorry to any art lovers, viewers, buyers out there. I don't mean to insult anyone.
It's okay, be bold.
Yeah, but yeah, just being in as many galleries as I have been in, watching my father sell his art, and seeing what sells and what doesn't. It's kind of a wacky thing. I think especially in New Haven, it's always been powerful in representing, like, not just the connections between people, but like in making mutual aid accessible to everyone. Like we've continued to do the music and arts events in spite of the pandemic. We've just become virtual. And another big thing about it is that it brings people together. And again, I feel like I'm just basically riffing off of everything Jamarr is saying.
Well, as we're winding down, we have about 2 minutes left, and I just want to make sure folks know how to find Life in My Days if they want to find out more. So Jamarr, Eliot, could you hop in, and we will share that information on social media when we share out this interview as well.
Again, you could find us at www.lifeinmydays.com. And also, we have a Life in My Days Facebook page, which has over 90,000 followers. It's just says Life in My Days. There's two. There's the Jordan chapter, that's for Jordan. Our chapter just says Life in My Days.
Awesome. I want to thank both of you, Jamarr, Jabari, and Eliot Olsen, so much for spending time with me on this cold and snowy afternoon. I really appreciate it. We've been talking mutual aid, and if you want to find out more about Life in My Days, visit them on their website. Oh, and I think we're being kicked off. So with that, I'll say goodbye to viewers for now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.